So here we are on a gravel bar left by a flood about 4 years ago in 2021. And as you can see, the flooding stream basically scoured this area clean and, evolutionarily speaking, or ecologically speaking rather, wiped the slate clean. So what we're going to find here are what are called ruderal species, or early successional species, largely. And this is one of them right here. This is Phacelia histata, and I forget the common name for it. I will put it on the screen here. And this is often found further east in the rain shadow areas. It really likes mineral soils and open areas that get a lot of sun and bake dry in the summer. But you will also find it west of the mountain crest here in the coastal zones, in areas that get enough sun and are dry and warm enough in the summer. And here it is. And over here we have the trunk of a cedar tree that was swept away by the floods and swept here. And what is of interest here is the root ball of the trunk carried with it, as it was swept downstream, the roots and seeds of many plants. And you see these plants are starting to colonize the area. We have right here one that you don't want to touch, but oddly enough you could eat. Well, you could eat earlier in the season. It's now starting to go to flower, and it is too tough and stringy to eat, and it has nasty little grains of silica in it that would make you not want to eat it. And this plant is, of course, the stinging nettle, Urticia dioica. And down here we have what looks to be a salmonberry, Rubus spectabilis. And you normally don't see it in open, bright, sunny areas like this, but it was growing in a swampy area with a cedar tree right by it before it was swept away, and it has been swept here. And as you can see, it does have plenty of water. It likes it wet, and we're not that far from the water table. So despite how hot and sunny and dry it gets in the summer, well, it's not really that dry that far below. So the salmonberry is surviving just fine, and it is starting to recolonize this empty space. And then up here in the midst of the root ball, you see coming up is a seedling of the red elderberry, Sambucus racemosa. And that's another forest floor plant. And I don't know if it was here in the forest floor as a seed before the flood swept it here, or if a passing bird perched on this root ball and deposited the seed. But now here it is. And then down here you see a lot of young alder trees, and this is the common red alder, Alnus rubra, that you commonly see on the west side. And it also comes up in clear cuts, and it's a major part of the forest succession in this area. And the interesting thing about this one is, like the plants in the legume family, the alders can set up a symbiotic relationship with bacteria that fix nitrogen in the soil. And that's very important, because this soil, as you can see, is largely gravel that has been scraped clean and scoured clean of any organic matter that might be contributing nitrogen to the soil. So things like alders are really helpful in recolonizing these flood damaged areas. And if you look across the river here, you can see that is mostly alder that is growing by the stream. And before they started logging these mountains like crazy, this is normally where you saw alders, was in areas that had recent disturbance. And well, I guess you're still seeing them in areas that have recent disturbance. It's just that the disturbance is human-caused logging and not natural processes. And here you have more forest floor plants that have been rafted into the area on the root ball. This is Pacific bleeding heart, Dicentra formosa, with its lovely little pink flowers. You usually see it blooming a little earlier in the year, and there's some more up there, together with some more of what looks like it could be more salmonberry coming up. And over here we have some of one that I will hopefully get some better pet shots of later. This is a thimbleberry, and this makes absolutely delicious fruits, but this one's not going to be making any fruits because it's too young to flower right now. Over here on the root ball, we have Rubus leucodermis, the white-skinned bramble. And as you can see, it does on its younger shoots, they do have a white waxy coating that comes up on the first year shoots. And it fades a little by the second year. It's not as pronounced after the bark has undergone a winter. And this is actually, the common name is blackcap, and yes, that's the namesake of this channel. And it makes very flavorful black raspberries when it ripens. And yes, they are raspberries even though they are dark purplish black. The difference between a blackberry and a raspberry is not the color, it is what happens when you pick the fruit. If you pick a raspberry, the receptacle that the drupelets grew on, it remains behind. It stays on the bush, and the fruit that you pick, which is actually an aggregate fruit, it's multiple fruits, not a single fruit, is hollow on the inside. If you pick a blackberry, the receptacle comes away as part of the aggregate fruit. And over here we have a currant of some sort, and I would guess based on the flowers that this currant is the swamp currant, Ribes lacustre. It would be the currant you would most likely see growing underneath a cedar tree. And again, this rafted here, and because the water table is high, you are seeing it here, and it's surviving. And this whole thing is like a little garden of plants that are now starting to colonize this area. Right in the center of the frame is something that'll be spectacular in another month or two, and it is a classic colonizer of disturbed areas here. This is fireweed, Chimnerion angustifolium. And as its name implies, one of the disturbances it loves to colonize after is destructive forest fires, stand replacing forest fires. It will come up from long dormant seed banks on the now exposed forest floor, but it also likes to come up in areas that are subject to other disturbances. And you will see it in the city coming up on vacant lots as one of the pioneering species if a vacant lot is left alone for a few years. And in London, famously enough, it came up in the bomb craters from buildings that were destroyed in the Blitz. And I think the British even might have given it a special name at that point for its propensity to do that. And yes, it is native to both the United Kingdom and to North America. In fact, it's native throughout the entire northern hemisphere. This is one of the species of plants that has what is called a circumboreal distribution. It's found throughout the northern reaches of the northern hemisphere worldwide. The desert-like appearance of this gravel bar, it is not a desert. We are still very much in a rainforest climate, and that is evident if you go down to the surface and you start looking here. You will see that moss is starting to grow pretty much everywhere you look carefully in and amongst the rocks. There is moss coming up, and I don't have my moss flora with me, so I am not going to wager a guess as to exactly what species of moss this is. But whatever species it is, mosses are a major step in ecological succession. They can come up in areas that are just too deprived of nutrients and resources for other plants to come up in readily. And they do build organic matter, and they do start the process of building soil and making an environment that is more friendly for other plants to come up in. And over here we have another early successional species coming up, and this is a little baby Douglas fir tree, which is the state tree of Oregon and a major component of our forests too. And yes, Douglas fir is definitely a successional species. You will not see a forest primarily composed of Douglas fir if the forest remains undisturbed for many centuries. After many centuries, the Douglas fir will eventually die out because they are unable to survive as seedlings in the shade created by the adult trees. And what will come up in such a forest are trees that are more able to survive in low light as seedlings, namely western hemlock and western red cedar. And this plant here, this yellow composite, is Eriophyllum linatum. The common name is Oregon sunshine. And it is, once again, you see it a lot when you start getting east of the mountain crest and you start getting openings on the east side. But you will also find it in the west here. And where you'll most often find it is places like, if you look right up, you'll see there's a rocky bald up there. And I would guess that is how the seeds for that got here. They slid down a rocky bald and into the stream, and the stream carried them here. And because this is now a dry, sunny, open spot, it is finding it to its liking. And you see this species growing here, and it's a delightful little thing to see. And over here, we have one of our, how many are there? I think there's at least 3 species of strawberry native to British Columbia. And this is one of the 3. This guy happens to be the Virginia strawberry, and I can't stop shading it with my own shadow. Hard to shade it and get a picture of the flower. And as you can see, it has a typical 5-petaled flower that you see rose family plants have. And yes, this is in the rose family. And it does make edible berries. They're a lot smaller than cultivated strawberries, but they're perfectly tasty. In fact, I think they actually taste better than cultivated strawberries. And once again, it is growing in an open, sunny spot. And because it happens to like sun, you will not find strawberries in the deep forest where there is a lot of shade. And it is doing what strawberries do. It is sending out these runners to create new strawberry plants. And there's a lot of space for new strawberry plants here because it is mostly bare soil. We're in an area where there's these islands of thicker vegetation. And of course, they actually once were literal islands. When it was flooding, these are the areas that weren't flooded, and the floodwaters parted and left them intact. And now these islands are serving as yet another source for plants that can come and recolonize this barren landscape. This is one I can tell you the genus about, but I can't tell you the species because it's from a very large genus that has a huge number of species in it. And this is a sedge, and the genus name is Carex. Can you focus on there? You go. Focus on the developing seeds here. And the distinguishing feature of the sedges and the family they're in is this stem is triangular in cross section. And there's a huge number of sedges. They generally do like to grow in wetter areas like riversides or soil that was transported from a riverside by a flood. And here is one that is coming up and helping to recolonize this gravel bar. And again, it's probably living because although it may look desertic, well, look right there, there's a little stream that is fed from the groundwater, and as you can see, the water table is not very far below. Here we have a penstemon, and unfortunately I can't tell you exactly which species it is. Maybe I'll be able to key it out when I get back home. But this is probably Penstemon cerulatus or Penstemon subcerulatus would be my guess. They are both west side species of penstemons, except you don't see a whole lot of penstemons growing on the west side of the mountains because it's generally too shady for them. They like it sunny, and well, it's definitely sunny here. This is the sort of disturbed area that has a lot of sunshine that you will find it growing. And the penstemons are the largest group of flowering plants that is endemic to North America. I should say the largest genus that is endemic to North America. They are found nowhere outside of North America. And especially in Europe, they are appreciated for their beauty, and they're commonly grown in gardens. And as part of the tragedy of not appreciating what is local to you, they are not so commonly grown in gardens here, although they are starting to be more and more. What really looks like an entire clod of soil that was transported intact or mostly intact, probably held together by root balls again. You can see the remains of one deciduous tree that brought it here, probably an alder. And in this big clod of soil, you can see what is normally a forest floor plant, but it is managing to survive here. And if you look at the flowers closely, and I'm going to try to get a still close-up of these two, because This thing doesn't want to focus. Maybe it'll focus now that it has a bigger target of my hand. This guy is called fringe cups, Telaima grandiflora. And it is what its name implies. It makes little cups that have colorful fringe on them. Well, the fringe starts out as being white and it turns out to be reddish. And the fringe is, of course, the petals. And it's a common woodland plant, a very common woodland plant. And it's surviving here in this clod of woodland soil that's been transported to the gravel bar.